The bright sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the restaurant in golden hues. It was a typical afternoon at La Bella Vita, the kind of place where laughter bounced off the walls and the scent of fresh bread mingled with espresso. Families chatted, glasses clinked, and waiters moved gracefully between tables. Everything seemed ordinary, until he walked in. The door opened slowly, and the restaurant fell into an almost unnatural silence. Heads turned. Conversations paused mid-sentence. There he was, a man in a charcoal-tailored suit, broad-shouldered, tall enough to command attention without even trying. His presence didn't just enter the room. It filled it. But it wasn't just his stature. It was the tension in his shoulders, the sharp tremor in his hands, the way his eyes darted around as though searching for an invisible enemy. There was fear in those eyes, yes, but more than that. There was something else, something dangerous, buried under layers of control. He approached the host's stand. The manager, a man used to handling difficult customers, forced a polite smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Table for one?" he asked. The man nodded slowly but didn't speak English. Not even a word. Instead, he muttered something in rapid Italian, the words spilling out in a tone that was sharp, desperate, and almost pleading. The manager's smile faltered. "I'm sorry. I don't understand," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. The man's gaze flicked around the room. His eyes landed on a waiter passing by, a young man with a tray of wine. He called out again, the same rapid Italian, louder this time, almost urgent. The waiter froze, unsure what to do. "Sir, I don't understand Italian," he said, shaking slightly. The man's lips pressed together tightly. His jaw clenched. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small, folded piece of paper, and held it toward the waiter. "Leggi," he snapped, "read it." But when the waiter tried, he couldn't. The writing was in a messy, almost frantic scrawl. Around them, the restaurant murmured. Some customers whispered to each other. A little girl clutched her mother's hand tightly, sensing tension she didn't understand. The sunny, cheerful atmosphere was cracking. The manager, clearly growing impatient, stepped closer. "Sir, please, calm down. We are trying to help." The man's eyes flared. He gripped the manager's wrist, gentle enough not to hurt, sharp enough to make him wince. He whispered a single sentence in Italian, low and urgent. His voice cracked, a mix of fear and pain, a hidden heartbreak buried deep in its tone. The manager blinked, unsure how to respond. No one understood. No one could. Except her. Mia, a young waitress standing near the corner, froze. She wasn't supposed to hear him. She was just setting down a plate of pasta for a family of 4, minding her own business. But those words, they pierced her in a way nothing had before. Something about the accent, the desperation, the subtle tremor of fear in his voice. It was unmistakable. She knew that language. Not just the words, but the weight behind them. She had spent 7 years in Italy, long enough to pick up not just the language, but the subtle rhythms, the hidden meanings, the emotions behind every phrase. And this was a cry for help she couldn't ignore. The man, still gripping the manager's wrist, looked around the room again. He seemed to shrink slightly under the stares, the curiosity, the fear. His hands shook more violently now. Every second felt stretched, taut with danger and anxiety. The manager, finally sensing real distress, tried again. "Sir, please, we can help. But you have to tell us." The man shook his head violently, cutting him off. His eyes darted to the front door, then the back, as if expecting someone, or something, to appear at any moment. A bead of sweat ran down his temple. His breathing grew faster, more erratic. Mia's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to step forward, to say something, anything. But she hesitated. This wasn't just a nervous customer. There was something heavier, darker, under the surface. Something dangerous. Her instincts screamed that one wrong move could make things explode. The man finally released the manager's wrist and pressed both hands against the table for support. His body trembled. He muttered again in Italian, the words barely audible but carrying an intense urgency. Signora, Mia whispered under her breath, her voice trembling. I understand you. And that single thought, unspoken aloud, made her move. Slowly, deliberately, she walked toward him, her hands slightly shaking, her stomach in knots. Every step was measured. She didn't want to startle him, but she couldn't stand by. Not now. He looked up at her. His eyes widened slightly, not in anger, not in fear, but in recognition. A flicker of hope appeared for the first time since he had entered the restaurant. His lips parted slightly, as if about to say something, but then he faltered, unsure if he could trust her. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Sunlight streamed in, highlighting the tension, the sweat, the raw vulnerability of a man who could command respect but was clearly in pain. Mia stopped just a few feet away, keeping her voice low, calm, and careful. Signore, I understand you, she said softly, in Italian. His head snapped toward her, eyes searching hers, disbelief mixed with relief, with fear, with something else. The tremor in his hand slowed ever so slightly. The weight of his world, the danger, the secrets, the betrayal, didn't vanish, but for the first time, it had a witness. The manager and waiters stared, confused. The customers murmured, even more curious now. But Mia didn't care. She focused entirely on him, on the words he was trying to say, on the danger she didn't yet fully understand, but felt in every fiber of her being. The man leaned forward, still whispering, now in full Italian, and Mia listened. Every word carried urgency, fear, desperation. Every sentence revealed the depth of his trouble, a story no one else in the restaurant could begin to grasp. And in that moment, the ordinary lunch service, the sunny afternoon, the clinking glasses, all of it faded. There was only him. And her. The air was thick with tension. The quiet hum of the restaurant felt distant, almost unreal. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat seemed magnified. Something dangerous had entered the room, and Mia knew instinctively. It wasn't just the man's words. It was what they implied. Someone, somewhere, was watching, waiting, ready to strike. And Mia also knew, if she didn't act carefully, if she didn't understand exactly what he needed, everything could fall apart. She took a deep breath. She had no idea what she had just stepped into, but she also knew there was no turning back. The man looked at her again, his eyes wide, searching. His lips trembled as he tried to speak, and she realized he needed her help more than anyone could imagine. And that was the moment everything changed. The sunlight inside the restaurant no longer felt warm. It was sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife. Every clink of a fork, every murmur of conversation, now seemed distant, almost unreal. The entire room held its collective breath as Mia, the young waitress, stood a few feet away from the man in the charcoal suit, Lorenzo Moretti. She could feel his trembling, see the sweat glistening on his forehead, notice the subtle twitch in his jaw. But more than that, she felt something else, the weight of unspoken danger pressing down on him, like a storm cloud ready to burst. Mia swallowed hard, trying to steady her own racing heart. Her hand rested lightly on the edge of the table, but she didn't move closer yet. This wasn't just a customer, not by any measure. There was something in the way he spoke, the desperation in his tone, the sharp flicker of fear in his eyes. This man, he was hunted. Finally, Lorenzo spoke. Not to anyone else, not to the manager or the waiters. He whispered in Italian, his voice low, desperate, almost a plea. I know he's here, watching, waiting for me. Mia's pulse quickened. He was talking about someone, a predator, hidden among the ordinary lunch crowd. She noticed how every muscle in his body tensed as he glanced toward the door, then toward the far corner where a waiter was walking by. The manager cleared his throat nervously. Sir, please. Maybe you should sit in. Lorenzo's eyes shot to him, sharp, like a predator cornering a naive animal. His hand twitched toward his pocket as if weighing a decision, fight or flee. But then he let it fall. Mia stepped closer, her voice calm but deliberate. Signore, I can help you, she whispered in Italian. His head snapped toward her. For a second, disbelief crossed his features. Then, relief. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. His eyes softened slightly, and he finally allowed his shoulders to relax just a fraction. "Who are you?" he asked, his accent thick but hushed. "I lived in Italy. I speak your language," Mia replied, keeping her voice low. Her own hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to appear steady. "Tell me what's happening." He looked around the room again. His eyes scanned every table, every corner, every doorway. There was danger here, and he knew it. I I followed someone here. Someone who betrayed me. I don't know who is watching, but I can feel them. All around. Mia's stomach nodded. The ordinary lunch crowd, the sunny afternoon, the families laughing. None of it mattered anymore. Danger was here, and it could strike at any second. "Signore." "Stay calm," she said softly, placing her hand near his arm, not touching, just close enough for reassurance. "I will help, but you must trust me." He nodded slowly, his hands still trembling. There was pain in his eyes, but also determination. He wanted to stay, to face whatever this was, but his body betrayed him. Mia noticed it, the faint tremor in his legs, the shallow rise and fall of his chest, the flicker of greenish pallor around his jawline. Poison. He had been poisoned. She realized it in a flash. The symptoms were subtle, almost invisible to anyone else, but she saw them. That explained the urgency, the desperation in his voice, the fear that wasn't just about betrayal, it was about survival. The manager finally spoke again, nervously. "Sir, is there anything we can?" Lorenzo cut him off sharply. "No," he hissed in Italian. His gaze flicked to Mia. Not them, no one else, only her. Mia's heart pounded. Only her. She had no idea what she had stepped into, but she knew she had no choice. The weight of responsibility settled over her like a physical thing. One wrong move, and everything could be over. "Listen carefully," Lorenzo said, his voice barely above a whisper. He leaned forward slightly, pressing his hands against the table. "I need to know if he's still here, if he's watching, if anyone is following me, and I need to protect her." Mia's eyes widened. "Protect who?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "Not yet, it's not safe." His breathing was shallow, labored. "But he came for me, and he will not stop. Not until he finds what he's looking for." Mia realized then that this was bigger than a simple betrayal. This was dangerous, calculated. The calm afternoon, the innocent families. They were all part of a fragile illusion, a mask for the storm about to hit. She glanced around, noticing the subtle shifts in the restaurant. A man sitting near the window kept adjusting his jacket as if hiding something. Another customer's eyes lingered too long on Lorenzo. Mia's pulse quickened. They didn't notice her noticing, but she did. Danger was closer than she thought. Lorenzo leaned back slightly, wincing. His strength was fading fast. "I don't have much time," he whispered in Italian. I need to know who betrayed me, before it's too late." Mia swallowed hard. Her mind raced. She had to act, but carefully. One wrong step, one wrong word, and she could trigger something she didn't even fully understand. "I'll help," she said softly, "but you have to stay calm and follow my lead." His eyes softened for a fraction of a second. Relief mixed with exhaustion and fear. He allowed her to take the lead, to observe, to decide. That was enough, for now. Then, just as the tension in the room began to stretch to its limit, something caught her attention. A man near the back of the restaurant, a casual customer, or so he seemed, kept glancing toward Lorenzo. Not subtle, not natural. It was the way he moved his hand near his pocket, the way his eyes flicked, scanning. Mia's heart jumped. That man. He wasn't here by chance. He was the watcher Lorenzo had felt. She could feel it. She could see it. Every instinct in her body screamed that he was dangerous. Before she could warn Lorenzo, the man stood up abruptly. He moved toward the kitchen entrance, his eyes fixed on the boss. The restaurant seemed to shrink, the sunlight harsh and glaring. Customers barely noticed the tension, but Mia and Lorenzo felt it like a tangible force pressing down on them. Lorenzo's hand shook violently now. His body slumped slightly. "He's here," he whispered. "I can feel him. Watching. Waiting. He's close." Mia's mind raced. Every step, every breath, every movement mattered. If she misread this, if she spoke too soon, if anyone else intervened, everything could explode. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her own shaking hands. "I see him," she whispered back, "and I'll help you." He looked at her, a glimmer of hope breaking through the fear. For the first time since he entered, Lorenzo allowed himself to relax, just slightly. And in that small moment, Mia realized she was the only one who could understand him, the only one who could see the danger he felt. But danger was closer than either of them knew, and time was running out. The man near the back moved again. This time, he wasn't hiding it. His eyes locked onto Lorenzo's, and in that instant, the calm afternoon shattered. Mia's heart pounded in her chest. She knew the real test was just beginning, and she also knew, with a chilling certainty, that once it started, nothing would ever be the same again. The restaurant hummed with the faint sound of soft chatter and clinking cutlery, but to Mia and Lorenzo, it was a distant murmur, almost a background hum to the tension that filled the room. Every movement, every flicker of light across the polished floor, every shadow cast by the sun streaming through the tall windows seemed amplified. Lorenzo sat rigidly in his chair, hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles were white. His dark eyes scanned the restaurant, sharp and calculating, while Mia stayed just a few steps behind, ready to react at a moment's notice. Then she saw him. Table 6. A man sitting there casually, or pretending to, but there was nothing casual about his eyes. They were cold, sharp, and deliberate. Every few seconds, he would glance toward Lorenzo, not once losing track. The subtle way he tapped his fingers on the table, the ever so slight shift of his shoulder, the way he adjusted the cuff of his jacket as if hiding something. It screamed danger. Mia's stomach twisted. This wasn't a coincidence. This man was here for Lorenzo, watching him, waiting for the exact right moment. "Signore," Mia whispered, her voice barely audible. "Table 6. He's the one." Lorenzo's gaze flicked to the man, then back to Mia. He nodded slightly, his face unreadable, but his eyes betrayed tension and a flash of anger. "I can feel it," he muttered under his breath, his Italian hushed but clear. "He's the one. And he's been following me longer than I thought." Mia clenched her fists at her side, forcing herself to remain calm. She had no doubt now. The danger was not abstract. It was real, present, right in the room with them. Lorenzo leaned closer, whispering rapidly in Italian. "He's connected to the betrayal. The one who tried to poison me. I can't let him see me falter. Not here. Not now." Mia nodded. "I understand. We'll handle this. But we need to be careful. One wrong move and—" She trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Lorenzo's hands shook violently now, betraying the pain that ran through him. He took a shallow breath, pressing a napkin to his lips. "I don't have much time," he whispered. "I need to know who sent him before it's too late." Mia's mind raced. She had to think fast, act faster, and keep him calm while assessing the threat. Every second counted. She discreetly observed the man at table 6. He was tall, solidly built, wearing a dark jacket, sunglasses perched on his head, even though it was bright inside. He appeared relaxed, sipping water, occasionally glancing toward Lorenzo, but his movements were deliberate, carefully calculated. Mia realized he was sending signals, tiny gestures, subtle shifts, communications hidden in plain sight. Her pulse quickened. This was bigger than she had imagined. She leaned slightly closer to Lorenzo, lowering her voice. "Signore, I see him. He's watching, and he's sending messages to someone outside." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. His dark eyes darkened further, the anger mixing with exhaustion and fear. "I knew it," he whispered. "He's part of the network, someone inside the organization, feeding information. I cannot let them win." The man at table 6 moved subtly, shifting in his seat. He leaned slightly toward the corner, pretending to check his phone. But Mia caught the flicker of a glint, a reflection, a metal object tucked just under his jacket. Her heart skipped a beat. Weapon? Knife? Phone? Something meant to hurt. Or kill. Stay calm, she whispered to Lorenzo. Let me handle him. Lorenzo shook his head slightly. No, you must not draw attention. He knows how to see through people. Through lies. One mistake. And it's over. Mia took a deep breath. She had to think fast. She remembered the layout of the restaurant, the mirrors, the tables, the angles. A plan began to form in her mind. She would need to distract the man, manipulate his attention, give Lorenzo just enough time to act, or survive. Meanwhile, Lorenzo's body trembled as the poison continued to weaken him. Mia saw it in the shallow rise of his chest, the flicker of green around his jawline, the rapid pulse at his neck. Every second mattered. The man at table 6 shifted again. This time, he didn't pretend to be casual. He slowly rose from his seat, glancing toward the exit as if planning his move. His gaze locked on Lorenzo. The entire room seemed to shrink, the sunlight harsher, the shadows deeper. Lorenzo's eyes narrowed, scanning the man's movements. He's moving, he whispered, his voice barely audible, but filled with controlled panic. Mia, stay close. Watch. And don't. He faltered mid-sentence, struggling to maintain composure. Mia's hands shook, but she steadied herself. This was it, the moment where everything could change. She carefully stepped toward the man, pretending to adjust a napkin at Lorenzo's table, pretending to be nothing more than a waitress. Her heart hammered in her chest as she passed near table 6. She felt the man's gaze on her, sharp and penetrating, assessing. He didn't speak, didn't move, but she could feel the invisible line of tension crackling like electricity between them. Mia returned to Lorenzo, leaning close. Signore. He's moving toward the kitchen exit. He's about to leave, or do something, she whispered in Italian. Lorenzo's fists clenched. His eyes flickered to the doorway. He cannot leave, not yet. I must know what he's planning before he disappears into the crowd. Mia's mind raced. She needed to act. She grabbed a tray and walked deliberately past the man, pretending to pour water for another table. She subtly shifted her position, blocking his line of sight to Lorenzo while keeping her own gaze locked on him. The man froze. A tiny flicker of confusion crossed his face. For just a second, Mia had his attention, and she had to use it. She leaned slightly, whispering in Italian just loud enough for Lorenzo to hear. Write his name. Fast. Whoever sent him, whoever betrayed you. Write it now. Lorenzo's hand trembled as he pulled a pen from his pocket. He scribbled quickly onto a napkin, sweat dripping onto the paper. This is the one, he whispered. The traitor, I cannot believe it. Mia took the napkin carefully, hiding it in her apron. The man at table 6's attention flickered back to Lorenzo, scanning, suspicious, but too late. She had the information they needed, just a small thread to pull, enough to stay ahead. For now, the man at table 6 suddenly stood, looking around the restaurant, realizing something was off. But before he could move further, the kitchen door swung open, and a waiter came through carrying a tray. The man's focus wavered just enough for Mia to slip back to Lorenzo. He breathed heavily, exhaustion and adrenaline mingling. You saved time, he whispered, his voice weak but grateful. Mia nodded, swallowing hard. For now, she said. But he's still here. And he's dangerous. We can't let him leave, or he will find out what we know. Lorenzo's gaze hardened. Then we wait. And watch. Every move, every breath. We cannot afford a mistake. The sunlight streamed through the windows, glinting off the silverware, the glass, the polished floor. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the room, like fingers reaching for them. Danger was in every corner, every step, every glance, and Mia knew it. This was far from over. The man at table 6 was only the beginning. He was the first ripple of a storm that could destroy everything if they weren't careful. She glanced toward the doorway again, heart pounding. The man was gone. The chair he had been sitting in swung slightly, almost as if mocking them. But Mia knew. He wasn't gone. Not really. He was still out there, watching, waiting, and the next move would decide everything. The restaurant, once bathed in warm daylight and soft chatter, now felt like a battlefield disguised as an ordinary lunch spot. Shadows stretched across the polished floors, bending unnaturally under the sunlight streaming through the windows. Every sound, clinking glasses, murmured conversations, a child's giggle, sounded distant, like it belonged to another world. Mia stayed close to Lorenzo, her eyes scanning every table, every movement, every reflection in the mirrors strategically placed around the room. Her mind raced. The man from table 6 was gone, yes, but the threat had only multiplied. She could feel it. Danger was in the air, thick, invisible, waiting for a single mistake. Lorenzo sat at the table, hands pressed against the wood, his body trembling slightly. The poison in his system made every breath a struggle. Sweat glistened on his forehead, and his jaw was tight with effort. He glanced at Mia, eyes dark and urgent. "They won't stop," he whispered in Italian, voice low but fierce. "Whoever betrayed me, they're not just after me. They're after someone here, someone I came to protect." Mia's heart raced. "Who?" she asked softly, leaning closer. He shook his head. "Not yet. It's too dangerous. If they know I trust anyone, they'll move faster than I can react." His gaze flicked to the entrance. "We must be silent and careful. Every movement matters." Her stomach twisted. She had felt danger before, had sensed it, but this was different. It wasn't just about hiding or waiting. It was a living, breathing force that could strike without warning. Suddenly, the sunlight in the restaurant seemed to dim. Mia's eyes flicked to the front windows and froze. A tall figure stood outside, partially in shadow, his gaze fixed directly on Lorenzo. The man's posture was calm, almost casual, but Mia's instincts screamed at her. This was no ordinary passersby. He was the storm waiting to descend. Lorenzo stiffened. He followed her gaze. "I see him," he whispered. His breathing grew shallow. "He knows. He's not here by accident." Mia's mind raced. "Should we call someone? The police?" Lorenzo shook his head slowly. "No, not yet. This isn't about the law. This is about survival. Strategy. One wrong move, one careless word, and it's over." His eyes were sharp, commanding, despite the weakness creeping into his body. The figure outside moved with deliberate calm. One hand rested in his jacket pocket, the other brushing lightly against the glass. Mia realized then that this man was not here to negotiate. He was here to observe, to calculate, to strike at the perfect moment. Lorenzo leaned toward Mia, whispering urgently in Italian. "He is connected to the traitor, the one who tried to kill me. But now he wants more. He wants to see fear, and he will get it if we are not careful." Mia's pulse pounded. "Then we have to act. We can't wait for him to make the first move." He shook his head again. "We act, but we must speak the language he cannot understand." Mia's eyes widened. "You mean?" "Yes," Lorenzo interrupted softly. "Italian, not English. Not the words the others hear. Only the language he cannot follow. Only then can we move unseen, unheard, safe enough to survive." Her mind raced. She understood. Every whisper, every gesture, every hidden message would have to be precise. One mistake could reveal them, could give the stranger outside the upper hand. And the poison in Lorenzo's system meant time was slipping like sand through fingers. Suddenly, a waiter passed by carrying a tray. The stranger outside flinched, just slightly, but it was enough for Mia to notice. He was watching, observing, waiting for a weakness. "Signore," Mia whispered, "we need a plan. How do we protect the person you came for without revealing your position?" Lorenzo's eyes darkened. "We create a language only we speak. Every gesture, every word, every subtle move. It becomes our shield." He coughed, pressing a hand to his chest. "But I am weakening. The poison, it's spreading." Mia's stomach twisted in fear. The man outside, the traitor, the unknown danger lurking. It was all a storm threatening to break. And they were at the eye of it, fragile and exposed. Then, as if on cue, the restaurant door opened again. A figure stepped inside, tall, calm, deliberate, the same jacket as the man outside. He walked in slowly, surveying the room. He did not approach, not yet. But his eyes, cold and precise, locked on Lorenzo. Mia's breath caught. She could feel the tension crackling like electricity. Every muscle in her body screamed to react, but she remained still, blending in, silent, calculating. The man stopped a few tables away, pretending to adjust his chair. His eyes never left Lorenzo. Every small movement, every casual gesture was loaded with intent. Lorenzo's hands shook. He leaned closer to Mia, whispering rapidly in Italian, words she barely caught but understood completely. He is here. Closer than I feared. Watch him. Every second counts. If he moves too fast, we lose everything. Mia's heart hammered. She had to stay calm. One wrong move, and they could all be exposed. But she also knew they had leverage. Lorenzo's words, her language, the code they could use to speak without fear of interception. The stranger made a slow step toward the back, toward the kitchen entrance, scanning, calculating, weighing his options. Mia's mind raced. She had to anticipate him, block him, control him, without drawing attention. Every second counted. Signore, he's moving, she whispered. We need to use the mirrors. The angles. Keep him from seeing you clearly. Lorenzo nodded, pain flickering across his face. I trust you. For now. But one mistake. And it ends. The stranger's gaze lingered on them, unwavering, sharp, calculating. And then, in a move that froze Mia's blood, he reached slowly toward his pocket. Not hurriedly, not nervously, but deliberately. Lorenzo's eyes widened. He pressed a hand to Mia's arm. He has a weapon. A phone. Something to communicate, or worse. Be ready. Be ready for anything. The restaurant seemed to shrink. Shadows deepened. Every sound, every movement became amplified. Mia felt the poison in Lorenzo's system, the weight of his trust, the looming danger, all converging in one terrifying instant. The man stopped, scanning the room again, and for a fleeting moment, their eyes met. He didn't speak. He didn't move further. But the look in his eyes was clear. He had a mission, and nothing would stop him. Mia's mind raced. She had to protect Lorenzo, protect the unknown person he was guarding, and survive. She had to act using the language only they shared, the secret code born of Italian words and gestures hidden in plain sight. And in that instant, the stakes became crystal clear. The danger was no longer outside. It was inside. It was here, and the next move would determine who lived and who didn't. The sunlight streaming through the windows seemed harsher now, cutting across the room like a spotlight on a stage. Shadows flickered across faces, across tables. Every second stretched impossibly long. Mia took a deep breath, steadying her trembling hands. She whispered in Italian, low, precise, urgent, Signore. We move now. He does not understand yet. Lorenzo's eyes met hers, a mixture of gratitude, fear, and determination. He nodded slightly, and in that nod, Mia felt the weight of responsibility crush her, and the thrill of possibility surge through her. The stranger outside, the figure inside, the poison in Lorenzo's veins. Everything converged. The storm was here, and the calm of the restaurant was gone. And Mia knew, whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same. The sunlight had shifted. What had once been a warm afternoon glow now slanted harshly across the polished floors of La Bella Vita, casting long, jagged shadows. Every surface seemed sharper, every sound amplified. The clink of a fork, the soft shuffle of a chair, the faint whisper of a glass being lifted. But nothing in the restaurant felt ordinary anymore. Danger had entered the room, and everyone else remained oblivious. Mia's heart raced. She stood beside Lorenzo, whose hands were pressed tightly to the table. His face was pale, sweat running down his temples. The poison still coursed through his veins, weakening him, stealing his strength, making him fragile yet dangerously alert. Outside the window, the tall man, the one who had been watching them, shifted slightly. His eyes remained locked on Lorenzo. Inside, another figure lurked near the kitchen entrance, moving deliberately, silently. It was clear now, this was not a coincidence. They were trapped in a carefully orchestrated trap, and one wrong move could be fatal. Mia's hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to stay calm. Every instinct screamed that this was a moment where one misstep could destroy everything. But she had something no one else did: the ability to communicate with Lorenzo in a language only they truly understood, the language of Italian, and more importantly, the language of trust, of reading each other's subtle cues. Signore, Mia whispered, in that quiet, urgent tone only he could hear. We have to act now. There's no more time. Lorenzo nodded slightly, his jaw tight. I know, he whispered, his voice thin but determined. But what you do next? It must be precise. One mistake, and he stopped, swallowing hard. His eyes locked onto hers. You must be my shield now. Mia took a deep breath. Her mind raced, thinking of angles, distractions, and timing. Every customer, every chair, every table could be a hiding place for danger. She couldn't alert anyone else, they would only cause chaos. She began moving deliberately, a calculated, casual walk past tables, carefully positioning herself so that Lorenzo was shielded from the stranger at the kitchen entrance. Every step was slow but purposeful, every gesture precise. The stranger's gaze followed her, sharp and unyielding. Mia's pulse pounded in her ears. But she forced herself to appear calm, as though she were merely a waitress going about her duties, not a woman navigating life and death with every move. Mia leaned slightly toward Lorenzo and whispered, Signore. The person outside is signaling. He's coordinating. Whoever sent him is watching. We need to move him away from sight. Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. Distract, mislead, but keep me protected. She scanned the room. A child had dropped a napkin near table 4, and a young couple was laughing softly, oblivious to the tension. She formulated a plan. Using the restaurant's mirrors and reflections, she could guide the stranger's attention elsewhere, create a temporary blind spot, and give Lorenzo the few seconds he needed to regain composure. Mia moved toward a mirror near the entrance, holding a tray of water high enough to reflect the sunlight in the stranger's eyes without appearing intentional. The sudden glare caught his attention. His body shifted instinctively, his hand reaching subtly for his jacket pocket. Lorenzo exhaled sharply, just barely noticeable. He followed Mia's lead, sliding slightly behind her position, hidden from the stranger's line of sight. Mia's mind worked frantically. She needed to create an opportunity for Lorenzo to write another message, another vital clue, without the stranger noticing. She lowered her voice, speaking softly in Italian, each word a carefully coded signal. Now, she whispered, her eyes meeting his, and he understood. With trembling hands, he pulled a pen and paper from his pocket. Every second felt stretched, like the space between heartbeats had elongated into eternity. The stranger, distracted by the sunlight and the reflective surfaces, had not noticed Lorenzo's small movements. Mia's pulse raced, sweat dampening her brow. If he turned now, it would all be over. With painstaking care, Lorenzo wrote down a name, just one word, enough to reveal the traitor who had orchestrated this attack. Mia snatched the note and tucked it into her apron, hiding it from view. She exhaled softly, almost imperceptibly, and whispered, We know who it is. That is enough. For now. Lorenzo's eyes flickered with gratitude. You risked yourself, he murmured. His voice was thin, weak from poison, but it carried an intensity that made Mia shiver. I have to protect you, she replied, her voice steady, even though fear twisted her stomach into knots. And the person you came for. We don't have a choice. Outside, the man in the shadows moved again. He did not enter, but his eyes never left the restaurant. Another signal, another silent message. It was clear the danger was far from over. Mia leaned close to Lorenzo, her voice soft but urgent. Signore. Listen to me. We will leave this place carefully. Every move must be silent, subtle. Do you trust me? Lorenzo's lips curved into the faintest nod. I trust you, he whispered. His voice was strained, the effort of speaking nearly unbearable. But we must be swift. They will not wait. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Shadows flickered, the sunlight glinting off the polished floor. Every second stretched unbearably. Then, with deliberate care, Mia signaled with her eyes to Lorenzo. Follow my lead, step by step. Together, they moved toward the rear exit, sliding past tables, avoiding attention. Mia kept the stranger at the kitchen entrance distracted, using gestures and movements only she and Lorenzo could understand. The tension was almost unbearable. One wrong glance, one misstep, and it would all collapse. Finally, they reached the doorway leading to the back alley. Mia's hands were trembling, but she forced herself to remain calm. She opened the door just enough to slip through, guiding Lorenzo carefully, step by step, into the shadowed corridor beyond. Behind them, the sunlight in the restaurant fell across empty chairs and scattered napkins, as if nothing had happened. But Mia knew better. The danger was still out there, waiting, watching. Lorenzo's body sagged slightly, exhaustion and poison catching up with him. Mia supported him carefully, whispering in Italian, Almost there. We are almost safe. His eyes met hers, filled with trust, gratitude, and something deeper, relief that, for the first time that day, someone understood him. Someone had listened when no one else would. They paused in the alley, the sunlight now a distant glow behind them. Lorenzo inhaled shackily, pressing a hand to his chest. You saved. More than my life, he whispered. You understood. Mia swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the day, the danger, and the secret they now shared. We're not safe yet, she said softly. But we have a chance. That's all that matters. For a fleeting moment, silence fell over them. The storm had not passed, the danger had not disappeared, but they had survived the immediate threat. And in that survival, a bond had formed, unspoken but unbreakable. Then Mia looked at Lorenzo, her voice quiet but firm. We must be ready. Whoever sent him. They won't stop. And next time, they might not give us even a second chance. He nodded, still catching his breath. Then we prepare. Together. The alley stretched behind them, shadows deep and unforgiving. Ahead, the city pulsed with life, unaware of the storm that had almost claimed them both inside a sunny restaurant. But Mia knew they had survived because she had listened, because she had understood, because she had acted when no one else could. And for the first time that day, Lorenzo allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible smile. The danger was still out there. The poison was still in his veins. The traitor had not yet been confronted, but they had survived. For now, and Mia knew one thing with certainty. The next move, the next moment, would be the most dangerous of all.